So, why we are discussing this topic, ICT and development? Basically, we are living in an age of internet. Everything is being done through internet, e-governance, e-commerce, e-education, everything. Even now, we are using internet services for conducting our classes. Even last time, examination was also conducted through online mode. So that's why it is very important to understand that what is ICT and how it can help in bringing development, right? So first, I would like to introduce the topic, that is why technology is important. Technology is important because it is considered that it is one, perhaps the most prominent source of ready-made instant solution, right? If we want to do something as a student, if you want some information, if you want to see some presentation, if you want some video, if you want to interact with other fellow students, I mean, your hand search for your mobile phone, right? Why? Because this is, I mean, our understanding, and this is true also, that it provides us instant solution, ready-made solution. We need not to uh, go for books and start searching for content. You just type some keywords and you will get your content. As a student, this is what, suppose if I am doing some kind of e-banking kind of facility we use, we don't need to go to the banks. We can just do all the things through our mobile phones only, right? So that's why it is considered that it provides us ready-made instant solution. So that's why it is important. So technology usually carries with them spectacular promises of problem solving, overcoming resources constraints, of generating growth, and of delivering development. So these are 3-4 things that it has. It promises us to solve our problems, overcoming resource constraints, and generating growth, and finally delivering development. So that's why technology is important, because we are studying development communication. So ICT can also help in bringing development. So there are two views when we talk about technology, right? First view is technologist view, and obviously technologist view will be that you get a technology and your all the problems will be solved. This is what technologist view suggests, that the school of technologists believe that there is a solution and they have it. The people should adopt as necessary to make it happen in order to obtain the hypothesized benefits, right? So technologists feel that if you society has a problem, so the solution is with them. So that's why they have it. They have the solution, right? And so why, what people should do? People should adopt as necessary to make it happen. It means that if technologists are suggesting some measures, if technologists want you to adopt some technology, then you society should try to make it happen, right? And why society should try to make it happen? Because it will provide you benefits, which is hypothesized, obviously, because technologies say that if you adopt this, it will provide you this, right? So this is what overall, I mean, technologist view suggests. So if result deviate, if suppose if hypothesized benefit, if you don't get benefits, then technologists feel that the problem is with adaptation. It must not be adapted properly, or the needed behavior change must not happen. That's why overall this technology could not succeed in the particular society, right? So this is what technologist view suggests. Technologist view say that, I mean, you just adopt a technology and you will get the solution of all your problems. This is the first view of I mean, ICT and development. Second view is related to social constructionist view, right? And social constructionist view are basically opposite to the technologist view, right? They suggest that fundamental structural issue of inequality and exclusion is more important than technology, right? If you find that there is an inequality in society, if you find that poor people are not getting adequate food or housing, then just providing them technology would not help, right? We need to change the overall structural problem of our economy or our society, right? For example, go to your village, you will find that there are so many people who are landless, who are homeless, right? And they are being provided some huts by the zamindars of that village, and they are living there for free. They don't have their own land, so they are landless, they are homeless, right? So obviously there will be inequality. So how will you remove this? This is fundamental problem, right? Government should act to provide them their land so that they can have their own home. But technologists will suggest that no, you give them technology, inequality will be vanish. This will not happen. This is what social constructionists.
Yes, sir.
So what they suggest, that government suggests, technologists suggest that open accounts of all the Manrega workers and send money to their bank accounts directly, right? And it will solve the problem. Yes, but if we look it in this way, it seems that yes, it will solve the problem. But actually when you go to the village, you will find that ultimately the same thing is happening. Now laborers are going to banks, they are getting their money and coming to village and giving the share to the village head. So what is this? This is a structural problem. Just providing some technological platforms would not going to serve or change the fundamental problem, right? So this is what social constructionists suggest. The key policy instrument become how to link people to ICT, not linking them directly to market, land, employment. This is what I am saying, that it should not be. I mean, if we go by technologist view, it suggests only to link people to ICT, right? They are not emphasizing on how to link the population directly to market, land, or employment, right? This is the two view. So I mean, when we say that how technology can bring development, so there are two point of views. One is technologist view and another is social constructionist view, right? So both are opposite to each other. One say that technology will provide the solution, another say that no, technology alone cannot provide the solution. You have to change the fundamental, a structural problem of the society, right? These are two views, right? So now they give some examples also. Social constructionist view, these scholars also give some examples. They say that take the example of WTO and TRIPS, right? They seek to ensure the profitability of the potential innovator, but simultaneously they also raise barrier to cheap diffusion and access for the users. Now try to understand. If we want development to our society, what is needed? The need of the hour is that whatever the new technology will discover or will innovate, that technology should be diffused in the society, whether it may be in developing countries or poor countries. Everywhere that technology should reach, right? And that technology must be cheap so that it may diffuse in the society and people may get access to it. But at the same time, WTO, TRIPS is organization which provide you intellectual property rights, right? The full form of TRIPS is the agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, right? So at one way, you are saying that technology will bring solution to the society, and on other hand you are having trips which provides you intellectual property rights. And what is intellectual property rights? That if you have innovated certain things, it means that you must keep getting profit of that technology for a certain period of time. So what are you doing? You are raising barrier to cheap diffusion. So this is, I mean, very contradictory, right? So this is what social constructionist view suggests, right? Take the second thing, they also raise question on technology. They talk about problems created by technology itself in the process of modern industrialization, right? They question on technology. They say that technology itself has created many divide in the society. What about that divide? In the process of modern industrialization, we adopted certain technologies, and we I mean start dropping laborers. I mean, we move from a labor intensive unit to the capital intensive unit. So this is also a problem. So what about the problems created by technology itself? So these are certain logics social constructionist theorists provide us, right? So you cannot say that through technology you can bring development, because you have to do lot many things. First, you have to start working towards how to those innovation to all the countries, and how that should be cheap so that it may be accessed by everybody. And second, that you have to look into the matter whether technology itself has created many division in the society. And in the process of industrialization, we find that yes, labor intensive units are not nowhere, and now laborers are not getting jobs because we have moved towards technology intensive units, right? So these are certain things which social constructionist theories ask to the technologists, right? So now what is ICT? First we must understand this. In simple words, information and communication technologies are defined as those tools that enable the process of communication and transmission of information through electronic means. In that way, all TV, radio, internet, mobile phones, all these platforms you can consider as electronic means. So it means, what is ICT? ICT means that those equipment, those electronic equipment which provides information and communication to the people. So it means these are ICT in simple terms. The tools of ICTs range from radio, television, telephone, mobile phones, computers, right? Last but not least, the internet. So all these electronic means are considered the tools of ICT, right? So now, after getting through these two views, now we must try to understand that what are the relationship between technology and human societies, right? There are 3 point of views, 3 perspectives of relationship between technology and human societies, right? First perspective is that technology as cultural neutral, right? Second is technology at intermediate position, and third is technological determinism. When we say technology is cultural neutral, it means that technology has nothing to do with the culture. Suppose one technology is being adopted by a society, that technology has nothing to do with the society or culture, right? This is the first point of view. Second point of view is that technology at intermediate position, it means that yes, it affects culture at some extent, but it is also neutral in some sense, right? And third point is technological determinism. It says that everything, culture, society, economy, everything is determined by technology itself. So these are 3 point of view which suggest, I mean, this is the problem where we keep discussing about the things, that whether one technology is cultural neutral, or is it at intermediate position, or technology determining everything. These are 3 perspectives. We must understand these 3 perspectives, right? So it is believed that only cultural neutral activities can be transplanted across cultures, as the specificity of the worldview of a community does not play as important role in cultural neutral activity. What it says, That suppose I ask you to adopt a certain technology, right? Suppose I ask you to start using mobile phones, start studying on your mobile phones. This is what I suggest you. Suppose this new thing, this new technology or this new behavior is hampering your cultural activity, or you find it, society find it that no, it is affecting their culture, then certainly that kind of technology will not be adopted by a culture. Why? Because people believe that cultural neutral activities can be transplanted across the cultures, right? If activity is not cultural neutral, then certainly people will not adopt it. Why it happens? Because a specificity of worldview, right? If something new activity we are doing, and if that activity is not affecting my culture, then certainly I will have no problem in adopting that new activities, right? So this is what it is believed. So now let us discuss about these three perspectives, right? When we say technology as cultural neutral, then many scholars try to propagate this idea that yes, technology is cultural neutral. And how they do it? They give some points. They give some arguments. First argument is that technology is functionality. Why technology is cultural neutral? Because technology is functionality. This argument states that technology has nothing to do with any culture. It only provides certain functionality which help in doing things easily, right? Suppose you got washing machine, you got mobile phones, you got printers, you got computers, you got tractors. Suppose all these new technology you got. So what it is doing? Tractor is doing the same thing. It is plowing the field, but with easy, with you can do it easily, right? But before tractor, you used to, you were using a bull farming, right? So technology has just provided you some ease. So it has nothing to do with the culture, because technology is just providing you certain functionality. This is the first argument given by all the supporters of technology as cultural neutral. Okay. Now, second point, technology is linked with applied science. It suggests that applied science is only interested in finding truth. That does nothing to do with culture. Technology is a product of science. Some innovations are taking place, and out of that innovation, you get some technology. So that technology is basically a product of research. There are scientists, there are technologists who are giving their hours and months and years to find some solution to the existing problem and to provide some equipment to the society. And by applying the scientific things, they get one technology. So how it is related to culture? So that's why technology is cultural neutral. This is the second argument they give. Third argument is that technology as objective parameter, right? Technology, people use technology to objectively see the different societies that where they are. For example, on the basis of technology, we decide that which country is a developed country and which country is developing country and which country is poor country, right? What are the basis? Basis of obviously technology. America is technologically very sound, very ahead of us. So that's why America is a developed country. European countries are developed country, because when we say technology, it is always not only about production related technology, all the technology, online technology, space technology, defense technology. So on the basis of technology, we compare different societies. So technology is used as objective parameter to differentiate between different societies, different communities, right? So again, you may be using technology to differentiate between different societies, but it still remains culture neutral because you are using it as a parameter. That is different thing, but basically technology has nothing to do with the culture neutral culture, right? So second point है technology at intermediate position. वो कहते हैं कि technology is at intermediate position. It means that the process of technology transfer, objects of cultural discourse also get transferred. This is what these scholars who say that you cannot say that technology is culture neutral. They say that technology is at intermediate position where they affect culture at some extent. Why they affect our culture at some extent? Because in the process of technology transfer, objects of cultural discourse also get transferred, right? Up take some examples. Take the example of washing machine, right? When washing machine came to India, before that people used to wash clothes by their hand and they used to, dry it under sun, right? So sun dried cloth they used to wear. So this is what our culture used to do. But when washing machine came to India, what happened? That we find semi-automatic washing machine. And in semi-automatic washing machine, why they? Because in Western countries, you do not find semi-automatic washing machine, right? Why India needs semi-automatic washing machine? Because washing machine change itself in order to the Indian culture. Because Indian people are not going to stop drying clothes under sun, right? So what it suggests? It suggests that no, technology is not culture neutral. Technology changing itself according to the culture. It means technology want to affect the culture. If technology has nothing to do with the culture, then why washing machine which was provided to India was semi-automatic, right? And this is the one example. Even if you adopt new technology, suppose when we adopted washing machine, it also affected our overall culture. It may have given some kind of empowerment to the women, because now women has not to spend a lot of time washing clothes. So you cannot say that when technology comes, it just provides functions. No, technology also bring some cultural discourses also, and those cultural things affect us. Now, when we are in the age of internet, our country used to sleep early and rise early. This is what our culture is. But you don't think that this mobile phone has changed our culture? This mobile phone has affected our culture? Now our young generation, you use mobile phones late night and they don't rise early. They sleep late and rise late, right? So you cannot say that technology do not affect our culture. This is, so they say that technology is at intermediate position where they affect the culture little bit and they provide some new things by using which you do your things with ease. So they put technology is at intermediate position, right? So thus objects can modify the new culture in order the technology functions in the same way as they used in the original culture. Why technology do so? Because if culture would not change accordingly, then technology would not be able to function well, right? If Indian people will not get individualized, if Indian youth would not get individual centric, then how would they keep using Facebook and WhatsApp? How would they keep using Facebook for long hours, right? So what is the need of our technology? Wants people to be self-centered, and when you will become self-centered, then your only companion is your mobile, your digital equipments, because you don't have friends with whom you can sit for hours. You don't have friends with whom you can go outside and roam here and there and play some games. No, you don't have all these facilities. So that's why you are self-centered. So that's why the only companion is mobile phone. So I mean, these new technologies want our society to behave like this. This is what intermediate position of technology these scholars suggest, that no, you cannot say that technology is completely cultural neutral. अब इसमें किसी को कोई समस्या है? समस्या नहीं है भी तब भी बोलिए कि समस्या नहीं है, ताकि मैं आगे बढ़ूं.
सर सेकंड पॉइंट फिर से बताइए ना.
सेकंड पॉइंट ये है कि ऑब्जेक्ट्स कैन मॉडिफाई द न्यू कल्चर. इट मीन्स कि जो नई टेक्नोलॉजी आप लेते हैं वो कल्चर को मॉडिफाई करता है, ताकि वो टेक्नोलॉजी उस नए कल्चर में भी सही तरीके से फंक्शन कर सके. वॉशिंग मशीन का एग्जांपल ले लीजिए कि जब वॉशिंग मशीन आया तो पुराने ओरिजिनल कल्चर उनका था वेस्टर्न कल्चर, जिसमें कि लोगों को चाहिए था फुल्ली ऑटोमेटिक वॉशिंग मशीन. इसके लिए कुछ प्री कंडीशन है कि रनिंग टैप वाटर चाहिए और 24 आवर इलेक्ट्रिसिटी चाहिए, तभी आपका वो मशीन चलेगा. लेकिन जब वो इंडिया में आया तो इंडिया में वो सर्टेन मॉडिफिकेशन के साथ आया. तो क्यों आया? क्योंकि वो नए कल्चर में भी उसका यूज हो सके. तो ये कहना कि टेक्नोलॉजी कल्चर को नहीं छेड़ता है, ये ठीक नहीं है. टेक्नोलॉजी कल्चर के हिसाब से अपने आप को बदलता है, और कल्चर को भी बदलने की कोशिश टेक्नोलॉजी करता है, सो दैट कि कल्चर भी उसी तरीके का उनका चेंज हो जाए. सो दैट आप देखो, अब हमारे यहाँ मदर्स डे, फादर्स डे मनाया जाता था क्या इतना ज्यादा? वैलेंटाइन डे, फ्रेंडशिप डे, पता नहीं क्या क्या डे आ गया. ये पहले हमारे यहाँ तो नहीं मनाया जाता था यार. हमारे यहाँ बेटे के लिए बेटे बेटियों के लिए जितिया होता था, पति के लिए कुछ कुछ त्योहार जो पता नहीं क्या, करवा चौथ और तीज वगैरह होता था, भाई बहनों का पर्व रक्षाबंधन था. तो ये सारे पर्व त्योहार होते थे. लेकिन आज देखो कि ये कितने सारे कार्ड्स का जो बिजनेस आया एक हमारे कल्चर में. तो कल्चर को चेंज किया कि नहीं किया उसने? जो ये कार्ड्स मिलने लगे हमारे बाजार में, फ्रेंडशिप कार्ड, तो वैलेंटाइन कार्ड, तो मदर्स डे का कार्ड, फादर्स डे का कार्ड, टीचर्स डे तो खैर शुरू से हम लोग मनाते थे. तो ये सब जो होता था, तो इससे क्या हुआ? चेंज हुआ कि नहीं हुआ? आज जाके देखो कि टीचर्स डे का स्वरूप कितना बदल गया है. जो कोचिंग सेंटर्स चलते हैं पटना वगैरह में, और टीचर्स डे क्या होता है? पार्टी डे होता है. तो कहने का मतलब ये है कि जो भी नई चीज आती है समाज में, वो कल्चर को भी प्रभावित करती है, क्योंकि वो चीज सिर्फ अकेली नहीं आती है, वो अपने साथ उस कल्चर को भी लेके आती है ना. तो फादर्स डे, मदर्स डे, ये सब बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट हो गया. हम उस दिन खास दिन में कार्ड जाके देते हैं, केक ले जाके काटते हैं. ये हमारा कल्चर नहीं था. तो फिर कल्चर को प्रभावित कर रहा है ना टेक्नोलॉजी या नई चीज.
यस सर, बट इसका क्या मतलब हुआ कि इन द सेम वे एज दे यूज्ड इन द ओरिजिनल कल्चर.
हाँ, इसीलिए कि जिस तरीके से ओरिजिनल कल्चर में वॉशिंग मशीन का यूज क्या है? वॉशिंग मशीन का यूज ये है कि भैया आप कपड़ा उठाइए, मशीन में डाल दीजिए, साफ हो जाएगा. मतलब मशीन अडॉप्ट हो जाए आपकी सोसाइटी में. तो अब भाई इंडिया में तो वो नहीं हो सकता है, क्योंकि यहाँ पे लोग धूप में अपने कपड़े सुखाते हैं. तो अब क्या हुआ कि अब लोग यहाँ पे सेमी वॉशिंग ऑटोमेटिक वॉशिंग मशीन आया. लेकिन अब आप देखिए कि धीरे धीरे कल्चर इतना चेंज होता चला गया हमारा कि आज हम फ्लैट कल्चर में रहते हैं, तो धूप की जगह ही नहीं है, तो हम भी अब ऑटोमेटिक वॉशिंग मशीन ही लेने लगे. सेमी ऑटोमेटिक वॉशिंग मशीन अब थोड़ा सा फैशन से बाहर जाने लगा धीरे धीरे. तो कहने का मतलब ये है कि ये जो कल्चरल डिस्कोर्स लेके आता है एक टेक्नोलॉजी। वो कल्चरल डिस्कोर्स क्या है कि भैया घर का काम जो है, ये जो कपड़ा धोना, खाना बनाना, ये सब जो है बड़ा इन्फीरियर काम है, इस समय जो है बहुत समय नहीं लगाना चाहिए, तो इसके लिए मशीन होना चाहिए। एम्पावरमेंट से जुड़ जाता है, बहुत सारी चीजें उसके साथ जुड़ जाती हैं। तो अब देखो कल्चर चेंज हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा, कल्चर को प्रभावित टेक्नोलॉजी कर रही है कि नहीं कर रही है? कर रही है ना?
यस सर।
हाँ, तो
यस सर।
ये है सेकंड पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू कि टेक्नोलॉजी को इंटरमीडिएट पोजीशन पे रखना है। ठीक है, दूसरा व्यू हम लोग डिस्कस कर रहे हैं। पहला व्यू हो गया क्या, टेक्नोलॉजी एज कल्चरल न्यूट्रल, जिसमें कहा गया कि कल्चर को वो कुछ प्रभावित नहीं करता है। ये दूसरा व्यू हो गया कि टेक्नोलॉजी क्या होता है, इंटरमीडिएट पोजीशन पे होता है, जहां पे कल्चर को थोड़ा बहुत तो प्रभावित करता है। और ये जो मैं लास्ट वाली बात मैंने आपको बताई अभी ना कि आज
सर एक क्वेश्चन है सर।
हाँ, एक मिनट
सर
में जरा,
टेक्नोलॉजी
एक मिनट जरा मैं अगले पॉइंट को कनेक्ट कर दूं, फिर अपना सवाल आप पूछिएगा। जो मैंने लास्ट पॉइंट आपको बताया कि कैसे आज फ्लैट कल्चर में हम भी अब ऑटोमेटिक वॉशिंग मशीन की तरफ आ गए हैं, और हम उसी तरीके से बिहेव करने लगे हैं जैसे कि वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी बिहेव करती है। तो यही बात हो गई। जो तीसरे टाइप्स ऑफ स्कॉलर हैं वो ये कहते हैं कि टेक्नोलॉजिकल डिटर्मिनिज्म, वो कहते हैं नहीं, थोड़ा बहुत प्रभावित टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं करती है, टेक्नोलॉजी ही सब कुछ डिटरमाइन करती है। टेक्नोलॉजी हमारी सोसाइटी को डिटरमाइन करती है, टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे कल्चर को डिटरमाइन करती है, टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे सोशल रिलेशनशिप को डिटरमाइन करती है, टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे सोसाइटी को डिटरमाइन करती है। ठीक है, तो ये हो गया थर्ड पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू जिस पे हम लोग अब डिस्कस करेंगे। हाँ, सवाल पूछो अब।
सर टेक्नोलॉजी एट इंटरमीडिएट पोजीशन में हम ये भी तो देख रहे हैं सर कि इकोनॉमिकली अगर डिसएडवांटेज बोला जाए तो फार्मर्स के लिए और रूरल पीपल के लिए भी होगा।
कैसे?
सर अगर वो मशीन्स खरीदते हैं ज्यादा तो वो इकोनॉमिकली वीक होंगे, और वो डिसएडवांटेज भी तो है फार्मर्स के लिए कि वो उतना फिर एज कंपेयर विथ वो ट्रेडिशनल वे जो अपना
देखिए, ये जो
क्रॉप।
देखो मैं ये कह रहा था ना कि जो आप कह रहे थे ना कि वो तो अलग बात है, यूजेज की बात अलग है, हम यूजेज पे भी नहीं जा रहे हैं कि उसका फायदा होगा नुकसान होगा, उस पर हम बाद में डिस्कस करेंगे। अभी तो मैं पर्सपेक्टिव की बात कर रहा हूँ कि टेक्नोलॉजी और ह्यूमन सोसाइटीज के बीच जब रिलेशनशिप की बात होती है तो अलग अलग पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू। कुछ लोग कहते हैं कि टेक्नोलॉजी को कल्चर से कुछ लेना देना नहीं है, कुछ लोग कहते हैं टेक्नोलॉजी भैया नहीं, कल्चर से थोड़ा बहुत लेना देना है। अब तीसरा डिस्कस जो हम लोग करने जा रहे हैं वो ये है कि टेक्नोलॉजी ही सब कुछ डिटरमाइन करती है। ठीक है, ये पर्सपेक्टिव को हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं अभी। अब यूजेज है, नुकसान है, फायदा है, ये हम लोग बाद में डिस्कस करेंगे। ठीक है,
ओके सर।
हाँ। सो नाउ दिस थर्ड पॉइंट इज टेक्नोलॉजिकल डिटर्मिनिज्म, and technological determinism suggests that society is shaped by its dominant technologies, right? मतलब in every time, I mean if you go back to the industrial revolution, at that time also society was shaped according to technology, right? When I mean industry technology intensive production system started, our society divided into two groups, capitalist group and liberal groups. Then a bourgeoisie class also came up, जिसको कि हम मध्यम वर्ग कहते हैं। ठीक है, तो यू मे फाइंड दैट नो टेक्नोलॉजी डिटरमाइन, टेक्नोलॉजी इवन shape our society. This is what technological deterministic theories say. Everything is determined by technology. Even Marx once said that the windmill gives you society with feudal lord, and the steam mill will with the industrial capitalist. So how can you say technology is not determining? Technology is determining our society. When windmill came, then we were in a time when there were feudal lords, zamindars. But when this system failed and new system emerged with industrial revolution, at that time we find the capitalist class and liberal class. So it means that technology is not culture neutral at all. Technology is determining our culture. Technology is determining our society. Technology is shaping our society. Right? This is the third point of view. Technological determinism usually refers to the present projected onto the future. We have no choice but to adopt this technology. Right? What technology do? Technology says that no, now it is your present, and if you adopt this technology, future will be like this. Your future will be rosy, your future will be great. This kind of projection technology does, and then you have no option but just to adopt the technology. Take the example of internet, take the example of ICT. If you don't know how to use computer, if you don't know how to use mobile phones, if you are not smart enough to make PPT and give a presentation, it is considered that you are dumb. You cannot develop. You are not a good student. But this was not the case 20 years back, right? It means technology determining. Why it determine everything? Because it projects your future. It show you that this will be your future, right? One of the well-known theorists promoting determinism view was Marshall McLuhan, and people know, media people know about Marshall McLuhan, who used to say that medium is the message. His famous line, medium is the message. We will come to that. Now, what he said? He said, the medium or process of our time, electric technology, is reshaping and restructuring patterns of social interdependence and every aspect of our personal life. It is forcing us to reconsider and reevaluate practically every thought, every action, and every institution formerly taken for granted. I mean, in short, it is saying that the medium, the electronic technology is shaping everything, shaping our actions, shaping our institution, shaping our thoughts, right? Shaping our personal life, shaping our social interdependence. So Marshall McLuhan once said about this. It means Marshall McLuhan also said that yes, technology impacts our society. Technology changes our society. It has a great effect on our culture and society, right? McLuhan famous preposition once he said that medium is the message, and the importance of this line is that he argues that the cultural significance of media lies not in their content but in the way they alter our perception of the world. Why he says medium is the message? Because he is saying this because he says that when you are in age of new media, now you have mobile phone. So mobile has certain cultural significance, right? Forget about what kind of message we get from this tool, what kind of content we get from this tool. That is different thing. But basically, every medium has a cultural significance, right? And this cultural significance of this medium changes our perception toward the world. And this is more important, change in perception toward the world, toward the society, toward the relationship. This is important. And that's why he says medium is the message. If a society is not reading newspaper, provide them newspaper. That newspaper will alter their perception. Forget about the content, what is written over there. The moment he will get a newspaper, whole perception will change. And that's why he says medium is the message. Give them radio then. After give them the television then. Perception will keep changing. Right? And so this is, and that's why many critics, Marcuse, Adorno, Mumford, question technology as neutral. Not only McLuhan, there are many people who says that no, technology is not neutral. Rather, technology has become a powerful tool for regulation. These people say that forget about technology is neutral. It is a powerful tool for regulation. We are being regulated by society. We are being regulated by government. We are being regulated by regulatory bodies, even service providers. You search one thing today, you go and search at Google any car, any kind of product, and on another day, go and open your Facebook page. You will find all the advertisement related to your search. What is this? You are being watched by these people. You are being regulated. You are being manipulated by these people. So how can you say technology is culture neutral? So these are the people who questioned this argument, and they said that no, technology is deterministic level. Technology determine everything. So these are three perceptions regarding technology and its relationship with human societies. Let us discuss about that what are the usage of ICT in different sectors, right? Some explanations of ICT describe it as a substitute for human labor, whereas some describe it as an extension of human labor, right? Some say that when ICT came in, then human labor became redundant, and now ICT is being brought in, and now human labor is has no work. So this is the first argument people give, and another argument is that it is just an extension, right? Extension means that it is a helping hand, a helping tool for the human labor. So after all, we must at least we should accept this fact that ICT can increase information flow, increase productivity, and also possess the capacity to alter social relationships, right? There is no doubt that as ICT can increase information flow, right? Think about the days when newspaper used to come to your home or in distant villages in 3 or 4 days, right? Even now in Bihar, if people living in some villages, if they want to read the paper like Hindu and Indian Express, they have to read 2 days old newspapers, right? So think about those days, and now the day when you have mobile phones in your hand, and now obviously information flow has increased, and if you have more information, then your productivity is also increased. So there is no doubt in this that ICT has increased all these things. So the potential of ICT is also made possible in the creation of new opportunities to develop communication framework at the local level. Example, establishment of telecenters in rural India. You know, Kisan call center. There are various other centers also. In Panchayat, you will find Rajiv Gandhi Information Center, SWAN, statewide area network. These kind of networks were also in place in various states, in Bihar also. So these kind of local rural India based telecenters and some initiatives have been taken by the government, right? So ICT has obviously changed the world. ICT has obviously increased the productivity, and it is helping humankind for development, right? So there are certain areas where ICT can be used. Now we can name some of them. You are knowing ICT education. ICT offers powerful and cost-effective tools for an expansion of education and knowledge. Think about centers like IGNOU, right? They are they are having their TV channels, and they are having their FM channel. Also, they have their own websites. Even in our university, we find that we can now we are offering you education through ICT. There are platforms like Swayam, right, where you can go and opt for papers of your interest, and you can have education there. And forget about all these formal education. Informal materials are also available on that platform. If you want to know something about an issue, you can go and search and you can get the information. So obviously ICT has increased, has expanded the education. So this is the first field, right? Second, where we can use it, ICT and economic growth. ICT can foster economic growth by providing new opportunities of import-export services, globalizing of local markets for reaching a global audience, right? Example, handicraft industry, right? So when now we are in globalized world, and think about the online facilities, Flipkart, Amazon, you can develop your own website. And the thing that in handicraft industry, which used to be very local, now you can sell your product abroad also, in different countries also. So obviously ICT has made it possible. And it is not only this, because we will discuss some of the cases later on, that now farmer can see the wholesale rate in other cities also. And if they find good price of their product in other cities, they can go and sell their product there. So obviously ICT has increased the economic growth. It has expanded the overall economic growth. So this is the second area. Third is ICT and health. ICT can also improve the healthcare services by providing possibility of remote consultation and treatment opportunities. Telemedicine is also a field in which doctor through telephone or through video conferencing, they can give consultation services to the remote villages also. So these kind of things can be done through ICT. ICT and poverty reduction. ICT tools can be innovatively used for the benefits and welfare of the poor. Therefore, it is necessary to make ICT accessible to poor people, right? How ICT can reduce the poverty? Because think Aadhaar. What is Aadhaar? Aadhaar is also ICT. There is a chip, and you can access your overall information regarding you, and ICT, Aadhaar card enabled services like direct benefit to your passbooks, opening of passbooks. All these facilities can obviously add to poverty reduction, because government will have better data about the numbers of poor people in a village or numbers of poor people in a district, and accordingly the government can plan to how to deliver benefits to them. So ICT can also be used. Even there are various facilities through mobile phones, through ICT enabled services. Farmers can get information regarding farming. Farmers can get their quality of seeds through. These kind of things can be activated, and that's why ICT can be used for poverty reduction also. ICT and governance, as we know that Indian state began to design and execute rural development programs with relatively visible ICT content in the 1970s. Now we'll go to little bit history with where ICT started, where the e-governance started. Right, there is always a difference between e-governance and e-government. E-governance means that government facilities to reach to the people through ICT medium, right? This is e-governance. It means that all the facilities of government services that must be provided to the citizens through online mode. So this is e-governance. And when we say e-government, it means that government will try to deal with your problem. Government will take your suggestions online. Government will try to give you solution online. This kind of facility has not been started yet in India. Now we are at the phase of e-governance. Yes, recently some initiatives have been taken when central government asked people to click a photograph of bad roads or bad lit. In Delhi, even there was a campaign that if your area is not properly lit, there is no proper lighting in your area, then you can click a photograph and upload it to the government portal, and government will try to give solution. Right, so this kind of things have started late, but if we see India, then ICT and governance started in 1970s. So that's why we can divide ICT and governance into two phases. First phase is 1970 to 1990s late, and 1990s onward. These are two phases. So in 1970s to 1990s, in these 20 years, you can say 25 from 30 years, you can say 1990s late, we have initiated two basic planning, which was very interesting to know, and you must know that how e-governance thing started in India. First was Dharampur Sub-District Infrastructure Planning for Development, right? This was one such early example of attempts to use computer application for cost optimization and decision making, right? So Dharampur Sub-District Infrastructure Planning, in this initiative, government tried to bring down, government tried to provide them, farmers and all, everyone, anybody who wants some information regarding the cost of their produce, or anything they want to know about some cost of some products which is not available locally. So through computer application, government tried to provide them all this information, and obviously it helped people of Dharampur sub-district. And there was second initiative taken in 1984, and the name of that initiative is the Karwar Rural Development Information System. And this was yet another initiative formulated with a focus on reducing delay and curbing corruption through a monitoring program based on computer applications. This was the thing where government tried to get information from common people about their problems, about the corrupt practices of local officials. And actually this was very successful. There is one example of this Karwar Rural Development Information System. There was a village in which almost 200 or 300 households were there, and there used to be a hand pump, and hand pump was not working. And villagers of that village used to complain, sent various applications to the local officials, but it was not done. But when this initiative was taken, when this initiative was started, what happened is that people just went to the cafe, and it took 10 rupees to them. And because at that time using internet was little expensive, so what they did is they just framed a mail and they sent to their officials that this is the problem, that we are not having our hand pumps and local officials are not doing their best to get it done. What happened, if just that the 10 rupees mail became a kind of magic, and that villagers saw that next day dozens of people were there to get it done. So villagers felt that yes, this is a kind of strength for them. This kind of facility empowers them, that just sending a mail and they are getting their work done. And what in the just 10 rupees mail provided drinking water to more than 500 people. So you can understand that how ICT and e-governance can help people. So these were two initial examples where government tried to introduce e-governance, right? And after 1990s, in the second phase, focus was on implementation of the National IT Task Force and state government IT policies. So when these were some small projects, and when government tried to find out that whether it is helpful or not, right? And when government found that yes, it is very helpful, people can get benefits from this ICT based information system. So government tried to initiate it national IT task force. They started setting up national IT task force, and also state government IT policies. They tried to implement it at nationwide or statewide. So this was the second phase after 1990s. Government tried to use IT for a wider range of sectoral applications, reaching out to a large number of people in rural as well as urban areas. Greater input of NGOs and private sectors in providing services to the public. This was the time when there were so many private players came into ICT. SIFI used to be one of the MSN, SIFI. There were so many internet service providers came in during that time. After 1999, basically, when government came up with new regulations, you will find that various NGOs, various private sectors came into providing ICT related services to the common people. So this was after 1990s, focus changed, and you find that in 1999, National Conference on E-Governance at Bangalore, it was organized, and in which it formed a resolve. The resolve was one-stop, non-stop, efficient, effective, responsive, transparent citizen governance through use of ICT. Now you just get it. I mean, you can elaborate all these keywords: one-stop, non-stop, efficient, effective, responsive, transparent, right? So this we resolved to provide this kind of facility to the people. And obviously, yes, we are on right direction. No because now we are in the government is focusing on bringing in digital empowerment to our common people. Now we are in a phase of where Digital India campaign is going on, and now majority of people are trying to use online facilities. So obviously, and now even through ICT, when ICT came in, now we have regulations also, IT Act 2000. In that IT Act, earlier before 2000, if you send a mail to anybody, and if so that is not applicable in court, that document will not be cannot be produced in court. But after IT Act 2000, what happened is that if you send a mail, that is a legal copy, that is legally that can be legally produced in the court, right? So now emails became a document. Now invest also in through online mode. Even you can now send money, online transaction can be done through online. So there are various facilities. Now if you want some information from some government sector, you can ask for, you can put an RTI online. So all these facilities started after 99, and we are on right direction, no doubt. The declaration emphasized the need to change the shift of governance from government-centric to citizen-centric, right? This is what we are lacking right now, if I see it critically, that still government has came up with so many e-governance facilities. If you want land records, government has already online land records. If you want to get your any data, any document, you can go and get it online. So all these things has been done, but focus is on government only. How government can bring all these paperwork down and make it online available. So still emphasis is on making the functioning of government easy. Still, we lack to make this whole system citizen-centric. It means that citizen must be empowered to raise their problems online, but they must get solutions very easily and I mean in transparent manner. So this is where we lack right now, and government is trying. Even recently, Delhi government said that now people need not to come to the offices to get their birth certificate or death certificate or all these kind of documents, domicile, all these kind of things. Government officials will reach to them and they will provide them all day, at their doorstep. So these kind of new initiatives are being taken by different governments. Hope that other governments also come forward, and even central government also start pushing for this. So let us see how. Suppose if you want to, I mean, get an Aadhaar card, you have to go to the Aadhaar center. Why not? I mean, some officials come to your home and get it done at your household. There are various private banks which are doing this. You need not to go to the banks. They will come to you and they will provide you all the services. So this kind of things has not been started yet. But yes, we are moving in the right direction. Let us hope that we get all these facilities very soon. The use of ICT was expected to facilitate efficient delivery of government services to citizens, businesses, to anyone, anytime, anywhere, through variety of channels at a reasonable cost. This is what we should look forward, right? So this is where we have to go. This is what we have to implement in our country. Then only ICT can be very much beneficial in bringing development in the society. There are some plans also, National E-Governance Plan. The national level e-governance program called National E-Governance Plan, NEGP, was initiated in 2006, and there were 31 mission mode projects. You know, in 1999 in Bangalore, all the state officials and the central government met together and decided that yes, national level ICT policy must come, and after that in 2006 government came up with NEGP, right? And in that, in NEGP there were so many mission mode. I mean, mission mode project means that government started some missions. Suppose in Bihar, one area they started one mission, in Tamil Nadu another mission, in Jharkhand another mission. So there were 31 mission mode projects which were carried out under National E-Governance Plan. So considering the shortcomings in National E-Governance Plan that included lack of integration, these were some problems in National E-Governance Plan, that lack of integration. Suppose one program in one project is running in Bihar and one project is running in Jharkhand, one is UP, one in Assam. So there was lack of integration. You cannot integrate all these programs in one. So this was a program. Even government application and databases cannot be integrated because all were standalone kind of mission mode projects. Scope of leveraging emerging technologies like mobile and cloud. So how to include this cloud computing, mobile internet. So this was also lacking. So considering all these shortcomings, Government of India launched Digital India campaign. And you must be knowing when a Digital India campaign launched. Anyone? Give me the year. When government launched Digital India campaign? Anybody? मेरी आवाज आ रही है आप लोगों को?
2015
नहीं 14 ठीक है 2014 में ये डिजिटल इंडिया कैंपेन शुरू हुआ था. So you can now understand, now you can add why I gave you this background, because you can start e-governance from 1972 till 2014. You can now have a proper understanding that how we moved forward in implementing national e-governance, and now we are in the age of Digital India campaign. So these are certain key visions of Digital India. First is digital infrastructure as a core utility to every citizens. So you have to make an infrastructure which should be utilitarian. It means all the utility related things should be provided to the citizens. Second is governance and service on demand. This is second point. And third is digital empowerment of citizens. It means digital empowerment means in this third key visions there is a objective that all the information will be provided in local languages. Suppose I don't know English, I know Hindi, someone knows Bhojpuri. Bhojpuri is not an official language, so that will not be included. But obviously, even it is said that even information will be provided in languages and local dialects also. Like in radio, All India Radio, you will find that it is not only English or Hindi, even local dialect which has no written language, but there is a dialect, because Bhojpuri is not a official language, but yes, there is a popular language. So in that language also information should be provided. So these are certain, and I want you people to go to this link which I have given, this Digital India. You will type in Google, you will find this website on top, and you can go and just see that what are the key visions and related objectives. You will find very, good document and very good policy. But let us hope that it get implemented. So these are certain benefits: efficiency and reliability, e-business liberation, consumer freedom, rural e-business, cost-effective services. These are certain benefits when we talk about development, right? So obviously it is efficient, reliable. E-business liberation, there are various examples that if a farmer want to sell its product to another city where it is getting good cost, good price, then a farmer can go there and sell its product. ICT is providing that facility, because earlier farmers would not know that in this city what kind of price they can get. So this kind of liberation is there. They are not bound to sell their product locally. They can sell their product outside also. Consumer freedom also. Suppose I want to buy something, if that thing is not available locally, or price is not good, then I can go to another city, I can go to another portal, I can buy it from somewhere. So it is kind of consumer freedom also, right? So rural e-business, rural people can also, they can start their e-business, they can by using ICT platform, and cost-effective services obviously. So these are certain benefits of ICT. Critical factors and limitations, these are also important. That upgrading skills of the existing workforce, right? Those people, suppose in bank, in post office, and in government offices, There are people who are old people who have not trained properly, who are not trained properly on these computer applications. So this is one of the critical factor at how to upgrade their skills, right? This is the first critical factor. Second is partnership in e-delivery of services, right? So this is also how to partner with private sector. As I said, in Delhi, case of Delhi, Delhi government was trying to partner with some online some private sector so that they can deliver services at the doorstep of every citizens. But there were certain politics and that was not yet implemented because Lieutenant Governor halted this policy of government. I don't know for what reason, but anyway, there is always a politics somewhere. But this kind of thing is critical thing. We need to discuss about all the how to, because government cannot do all the things. Government, if this kind of, if we have to make whole this e-governance thing or ICT related thing citizen centric, then we will have to partner with NGOs, we will have to partner with private sector. Otherwise, government has no such workforce who can deliver these kind of services at doorstep, right? So this is second critical factor. Third is infrastructure for ubiquitous access. Yes, obviously, still in India you will find that only 30 to 35% people have online access to internet. So we have to build infrastructure so that everyone should have equal access. So this is third point, because having mobile internet is not going to serve the cause, because you need to have broadband connections everywhere, so that on desktop, on computers, they can get print out of documents. All this kind of facility can be, because in mobile phone you cannot get all this service. You can, yes, access websites and some services, but you cannot get all the things through mobile internet. So this kind of infrastructure should be built up of yes, we are on that direction, because very soon every village has will have a fiber connection, Jio fiber, BSNL fiber. There are just all the companies are coming up with this Bharat fiber, which is being infrastructure being made by Reliance company. Let us hope that very soon we will get very cost-effective broadband services. So for harmonizing ICT with regional requirements, right? So ICT, it's okay that overall we know that ICT has these benefits and these limitations, but there are some specific limitations or specific use of ICT when we see it regionally. So regional requirements should also be fulfilled. So we have to harmonize ICT with these kind of things and prevent possible social inclusion. This is also a very critical point, that when you bring new services, ICT enabled services, so what happens that few people and some corner of the society remain untouched with new services, and it create another kind of exclusion, right? So there are people who are left behind. So this is also a critical point to how to make it ubiquitous, how to make it accessible for all, and how to make it sensitive, that those who are left behind, we have to keep them in the whole process, and we have to take them with ourselves, right? So these are certain critical factors and limitations we need to take care of when we talk about ICT and development. So this is what all the I mean ICT and development things is. So thank you. If you have any question, you can ask.